Welcome back to another episode of the Worthy for 30 podcast. I am your host, AirTasker. With me today is the CEO and founder of AirTasker, Tim Fung, coming to us from Austin, Texas. We were talking about Sydney, where Tim's originally from, and right now he's in Austin, Texas, which is another great American city. I'm based, 45 minutes west of Manhattan, here in New Jersey, but I've been to Austin twice in 2023 for the first and second time. I can't wait to go back. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Eric.
Absolutely. So it was very interesting. So I was reaching out to, I think it was to Tom at Aura and his team, his communications team is the same communications team or the PR team that works with AirTasker, which is super interesting. And we got connected and they were like, you got to talk to Tim. Tim's been working, Tim and team have been working on some this great platform, AirTasker, where it allows, you and I to help each other with tasks and being compensated for those tasks. And it was very interesting, learning about your story and how it started, right? You were moving, and can you just give us a timeline? You were moving and someone had a truck and one thing led to the next. And like most entrepreneurs, you became obsessed with the idea and how do we turn this into a business?
Yeah, that's right. So back in 2011, and that's like 14 years ago now. So it's been a long time building. But back in 2011, I was moving apartments, and I asked a friend to come and help me move. He actually runs a business which makes frozen chicken nuggets, and so he's got a refrigerated truck that he uses to do deliveries. And when you're in your 20s, you don't really want to go to like a white glove moving service that might cost hundreds or even like thousands of dollars to move apartments. You just ask a friend with a truck. So I asked my friend Ivan to come and help me move, and we did that. And it just got us thinking, why do we ask our friends and family to do all these kinds of jobs when there's so many people out there, who would want to be able to earn money doing that job and want to be helpful in the community? We annoy our friends and family. And what we realized is there's not really like a place where you can easily trust another person in your community. And so we all think of each other as strangers, and yet, 99.999% of people in your local community just want to help out. And so we set about trying to solve that problem of how we could make that happen.
And that is amazing. So 2011, you and your friend, you were trying to figure out, okay, how do we get friends and family to help out with some of these everyday tasks? You don't necessarily want, in your 20s, that's the mindset I had. I came out of college, making a few dollars, but not a lot of money. I want to be judicious with the money that I spend, especially if I'm moving. I was living in Manhattan at the time. Hiring one of those moving services is very expensive, so I can definitely attest to that. And you're turning the paradigm on its head. It's these are everyday tasks that you and I can do. So from that 2011, from that inflection point, what were the next steps that you took to start testing whether or not there was a marketplace or a business idea here?
Well, the first thing is like one of the hard things about building like a platform business or a marketplace business is it's hard to test whether it's going to work because you kind of need scale and users to make it work. Like in our business as AirTasker, we provide a platform, but it's actually like the community of taskers and the community of customers who, bring the jobs to us and also get those jobs done. And so it actually is a really hard one to test. It's not sort of like a little software feature where you can sort of like build it and then see if anyone uses it and then do that over. It's almost like building a social network,
Mm-hmm.
You just need to build it first. But what we did do is, for about 6 months after we sort of had this thought bubble, we were looking around, we were researching, and we were, mucking around doing our own UI designs. And I would just go and talk to like everyone about this idea. Like I was like really into this idea, and I was like, and my roommate at the time was worked in superannuation, which is I guess the equivalent of like pension funds in the US. It's probably one of the most like risk averse sort of industries that you can be in. And so every time I would sort of pitch him an idea, he'd go, "That's the worst idea I've ever heard. That's terrible. You suck. You're gonna lose all your money. You're crap." And this was the first idea where he actually was like, "Maybe." I was like,
Okay.
"Maybe that's pretty good. That's a good sign." So, yeah, from there, it was probably another couple of months before we actually sort of built and launched a platform. And it's one of those things where you tend to like when you have an idea, you're full of adrenaline, and you're like, "Yeah, hell yeah, it's a great idea." And then usually you wake up the next day and 90% of those ideas, you're like, nah, I probably just had one too many beers, or, like I was probably just a little bit excited, and it sort of dissipates. But this one actually did hang on for about a year until we launched. And then, it's been sort of 13 years of building the business since then. So a bloody long time.
That is amazing. And what is the feedback that you're getting from both the people who use the platform, like you and I, like the consumer, and the taskers who are now, again, this is gig economy at scale. It's like they're actually now have, they're able to monetize that space in between, whether it's work or work and play. So we'd love to hear some of that feedback that you've been receiving.
Well, it's really interesting because I think as a general concept, like AirTask is like the most simple idea you could kind of imagine. It's
Hmm.
really just like one person in the community saying, "Hey, I need help with something," and another person in the community saying, "Yep, I could do that," and connecting those two people together and sort of facilitating that. So it's kind of like the world's oldest and simplest, business model. And I think I would really think about it as like evolutions that have happened. At some point, hundreds of years ago, there would have been a town square, and you just look for a person who can help you do something. Then at some point, that turned into like notice boards, and then at some point, that turned into the yellow pages,
Hmm.
and then at some point, that turned into like people Googling for stuff. And I would say that AirTaskers, create another evolution on the world's oldest idea, which is like facilitating two people help each other out. But we are doing things a little bit differently based on the technology that's now available. And I'd say the two things that we're doing most differently is, one, we're really embracing the community idea. So we are kind of like the anti-Uber, I would say. Like Uber is about standardizing a service, standardizing a price, standardizing expectations, and then just sort of like it's a commodity and you can trade that commodity. The commodity is transport.
Yes.
AirTask is totally like community. We are very much a notice board, and anyone can be a customer and anyone can do the job, be a tasker. And often people who are customers are also taskers. So, maybe you need someone to help you get your house cleaned. But, in Australia, we have a lot of accountants, tax consultants, and lawyers use AirTasker to pick up work. So, if you're a lawyer, you may say, "Hey, I need someone to help me clean," but I can actually help write a shareholders agreement for you. And so it's a community model is one thing that's unique. The second thing that's unique is that we describe it as being infinitely horizontal. Other than like one type of service like Uber
Hmm.
or a couple of different kinds of services like a home services company, AirTaskers literally ask for anything. As long as it's legal, you can ask for it. And the reason why that's kind of important is that a lot of jobs don't fit neatly into categories. And so there are all these jobs out there that are like, "Oh, I need someone to come and help me, move some boxes from one side of the office to the other side of the office." Or I need like a clown for my kid's birthday party, but you have to be able to speak, Tagalog, like Filipino or something. Or it might be that I need someone to help me with some feng shui in my house because I want to, have good spiritual, connection with my home. All of these kinds of jobs, there's not really like an obvious service offering that's out there for them. And so what AirTasker lets you get done is like all of those things that you didn't even know could be a job. And it's kind of like a wacky idea because when you tell people about, all those job examples that I gave, they're always like, "Yeah, but there's not enough of those." And that's actually true. There's not enough of those like individually in
Hmm.
any one city. But when you sum up all the stuff that doesn't fit neatly into a category, it's actually it's a huge market. Um, and so, yeah, I guess that's what we've been discovering as we've been building the company.
Right. I mean, it's again very horizontal. It's all encompassing. What are some of those jobs or tasks that didn't really fit into a container that really stood out to you? Like, oh, I didn't know that existed, or I didn't know someone would actually want that.
Well, the thing that I love is that every city sort of has its own vibe.
Hmm.
And so, in Sydney, there'll be people who want an animal shelter. It was like we need someone to come over and look after 30 newborn puppies for us for a day because we're short on staff. In LA, we had famously someone posted up, "I need someone to stage my home to get rid of the negative juju in my home." A lot of mime artist requests in LA. A lot of people want mime artists as like an entertainer for their for their birthday party. And then in Austin, we had someone who wanted someone to train 6 very large dogs, but noted that their dogs really don't like cats. And so we're like, Austin's weird. Like, they're keeping Austin weird, which is cool. And so I think that the best thing about our product, I think, and how we're scaling it is that it kind of automatically localizes to the local community. For example, like in Australia, we don't have much snow, so there's never any snow shoveling tasks. But if we were to launch in Boston or New York City, you might actually have someone say, hey, look, I need you to clear the snow out of my driveway. So it sort of automatically self-localizes, which I think is a good feature of the platform.
That is amazing. And when you talk about like hyper localization, which I think consumers like, right? I'm here in New Jersey. I want to understand like what are the local restaurants within 5-10 miles of me? Okay, what are the best Italian restaurants? I don't really care, but I don't care as much as the best Italian restaurants in New York City. So understanding that these different tasks or taskers, people who can do these various tasks. Yeah, to your point, like snow, we get a lot of snow. So having the ability to open up an app and find someone who knows how to shovel snow. I know it sounds pretty rudimentary, but knows how to shovel snow is great. Again, because it's that hyper localization. But in terms of how you're communicating out to your consumer, is there a strategy to communicate the nuance from market to market?
So it's a really challenging business to sort of get the word out about. So our tagline is, again, like we love to be like super direct, transparent, just honest. The tagline is get anything done. And that is factually what it is. Like you can get anything that you can think of, you can post a job for that and find someone in your local community to be able to help with that. But it is a tricky business to market and get the word out there because it's sort of like the Yellow Pages, like how do you get people, like the Yellow Pages didn't really do any marketing. They just had like this massive yellow book and they would put it into people's homes. And that was kind of inadvertently marketing because you would always think then, once you had this big yellow book in your house, and, you can probably see how old I am now. But, if you had this big yellow book in your house and then you had a roof leak, you would immediately think, I need to go to the Yellow Pages. Like that's just where I go to. And we are trying to create that same behavior, with the big blue A of AirTasker. When you need something done, go to AirTasker. And that is complicated because it's not as like niche-y as like food or like electrician. It's kind of anything. And so we've learned how to do a lot of great brand marketing over the years, and could talk to death about all of the different tactics that we use to spin up and expand our marketplace. But I think one unique thing that we're doing at the moment, which is pretty cool, is that we've done a partnership with the Racing Bulls Formula One team. And so we sponsor the Racing Bulls, which is one of Red Bull's teams. And we are less about sponsoring the cars, the Formula One cars, right, and less about the Formula One drivers, and more about all the people in the team behind the scenes who are getting the tasks done that actually make it all happen. And I think what a lot of people don't know is like a Formula One team is over 1,000 people to run just 2 cars for a year. I mean, it's crazy. Like they have like a factory in Italy to manufacture every single component of the car. They have a team in England which manages all the commercial and the business sides of it. And then they fly to like 25 races around the world, which is like basically a race every fortnight in a different country. And it's just 2 cars and 2 drivers, but there's over 1,000 employees, which is just wild.
Wow! So it's really showcasing those individual those 1,000 people in terms of what they're doing and their contribution, which is
totally. It's like for us, it's so authentic because it's really honoring these people who have these like incredible skills. You're talking about really elite skills like in manufacturing, in designing components, in engineering things, like all of these different skills. And it's really like shining a light on them. And that's what we try to do on AirTasker as well, which is we don't try to standardize and commoditize labor. We're saying that every single person is a unique person, all bring unique things to the table. And it's really about humans doing jobs. And so we, whilst we, I love, seeing the Waymo cars out on the road here, yes, and all of the robotics and stuff like that, and a lot of respect for autonomy and autonomous machines and things like that. But AirTasker's mission is all about helping people be able to use their skills to be able to make money. And that is something that we're never going to stray from. Like we really are inspired and motivated. Like when you see a human being get really good at their craft, whether it's IKEA furniture assembly, whether, you mentioned snow shoveling before. It's definitely a skill. Like some people are good at it and some people suck at it. So, I would say that that's certainly a skill. And I find that just like, it's taken me 40 years of my life to work it out. But the thing that energizes me the most is like watching someone like really be into what they do and do it really well. And I think Formula One sort of showcases tasks at that kind of level.
And educate. Like my wife watched the Netflix documentary or show that
Yeah.
got the entire U.S. enthralled with F1 and racing. But to understand the nooks and crannies behind each racing team, I think
Well,
is
it's quite
challenging.
funny because my wife is really into the Netflix show as well, and it's quite interesting because it's sort of brought to life all the other people in the team too. So that the team bosses now are sort of like these celebrities that people all know about. But again, like I guess it's the whole team behind the dream. There's so many people doing cool stuff, and for me, it's like whether it's like a Broadway show and imagining all those people who have had to design the set, had to do all those cool things. Like genuinely, those are cool skills. And yeah, I really love the idea of being able to market AirTasker and get the word out there through this sponsorship, but at the same time do something that's really authentically and genuinely like energizing.
Yeah, energizing. It's about the human too. It's like to your point, that person who's really good at snow shoveling. I imagine, if they got a spotlight on the homepage of the New York, again, you're searching in New York for a snow shoveler, and Tim or Eric is number one or rated number one. It's like holy shit! Like thank you.
Well, I'll tell you what else is on our platform. The way it works is that the customer posts the job. The taskers then give you a quote, and you can pick the tasker that fits your needs. And I think the best thing about that, and the most heartening thing we've seen about that is, most people actually don't pick the tasker that's going to do the job based on price. In fact, 70% of the time, people do not choose the cheapest person. And it kind of makes sense because in services, there's like a lot of like difference in the quality of the outcome. Like, would you rather have your snow shoveled by someone who's, I don't know, half baked? Like, if I help shovel your snow, I'm probably going to do some half baked version. And like, are you actually going to salt the driveway afterwards? Is it going to like, are the edges going to be trimmed and stuff? Or would you rather just pay someone instead of, $60 for that, pay them $75 and get it done perfectly? And what's cool about that is from a tasker's point of view, it means that they can actually make serious cash by proving that they're good. And I think a lot of the platforms, especially in the United States, a lot of the platforms have tried to go down this route of like fixing pricing, and I guess that has merit in the sense of like it can make it more predictable for the customer. But it's got this severe downside of basically saying to the workers, that's how much you're always going to earn. And we'll tell you how much you earn versus, letting workers be a bit more entrepreneurial and say, you know what, I back myself to charge twice as much and I'll do twice as good a job.
Yeah, that is amazing. To your earlier point about commoditizing, labor. This person, has a specific craft. Yes, you think again, the layperson may think again, it's an everyday task. Why are they charging twice as much? But to your point, you get what you pay for, right? So if you're going to pay that $75, you're expecting, and again, the edges trimmed and the driveway shoveled and the driveway salted. And that impact compounds to your point again, that human element that you just mentioned of providing a conduit for these people to monetize that skill that they knew they had, but they didn't know where to go. I think that's right. That's you're helping them find that
Absolutely.
place.
And by the way, everyone has their own. What we've discovered is everybody has their own view on what good is. And so some people will actually say, you know what good for me is? Good for me actually is cheap. I actually don't really care much about my backyard snow. I just need someone to do it quick and dirty. And what's good for me is cheap, fast, and move on. So I'm happy to hire a college student, $50. Someone else might be like, I'm having a party. I'm having a wedding in my home tonight, and it's got to be done perfectly. And I'd rather pay $300 and have the best of the best person do it. And so, I guess what we learned is like with services, because it's not a product, it's not like an AirPods or
Mm-hmm.
it's not a pair of Nike shoes. The quality is almost always in the eye of the individual customer. And that's the other reason why we don't believe in sort of standardizing things, is because everyone's got their own take on what they think is good, and that's okay. That's also sort of like an expression of humanity and people.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked about, always being there for the human, for the person, on the both sides of the marketplace, the consumer as well as the tasker. And you talked about, Waymo. It's funny. I was just in Scottsdale, and Phoenix is another city where Waymo is everywhere. It's unbelievable,
Yeah.
everywhere. Austin, yes. I think San Francisco as well. Where does AI, because AI is like the hot topic now, where does AI fit into AirTasker's model?
It's actually so beneficial for us. So as a business level, I think for now, there are a lot of jobs which, in theory, I guess like a humanoid robot could do, but I think we're quite far away from it because if you think about a simple job like fixing a latch on a fence,
Hmm.
that's actually very complicated to write a piece of software or design a robot who would be able to actually do that. Like we take it for granted, but humans are great for these sort of like high dexterity things. I've got to like reach under that latch,
Hmm.
pull out that pin, reinsert that screw. Like that's actually really complicated. I think until sort of humanoid robots come and take over all those jobs, AirTask has actually got the most sort of defensible jobs that are out there. And so I think humans are going to be useful for a long time. And when the robots come and can do everything for us, then we've probably got other problems that we have to deal with. But in terms of like how AI really helps us is that because we have a very unstructured marketplace, like customers can ask for anything, just like on Craigslist or
Hmm.
Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and taskers can quote on any job they want in a very open way. We always had this problem that the data wasn't structured. Like it was sort of like it was like quite a lot of effort. You had to like type the task out, and then the
Hmm.
other person's got to like read through all the tasks. And using generative AI, we can actually take a lot of friction out of that process. So rather than asking you to describe all of the things you need done in your snow shoveling task, you can just say snow shoveling, and then our AI can actually ask you, oh, okay, do you need, the edging done? Would you like the driveway salted? Those kinds of things. And we can help you be able to articulate yourself. And that makes for a better job description for the tasker who's going to do the work. Like that's exactly what they want, which is I want a very clearly defined thing that I've got to go and do. So we've experimented with a lot of generative AI. It's not as simple as just chatbots. I think most people are kind of finding now that chatbots are kind of good in some ways, but it's not really the interface that people want for everything. Like I don't want to freaking have to talk to a robot. Like sometimes I just want to have a few buttons to press and things like that. But the concept of generative AI is super helpful for us in our marketplace and connecting two people together.
That is amazing. So in terms of like that, making it fast, because consumers, like it's like yesterday thinking that you have to wait a week until get a package. Now you go on Amazon and you can say, okay, you can have that package delivered within 24 hours. I'm like, what? Excuse me, I'm ordering at 8 o'clock
Yeah.
and it's going to come to me at 4 in the morning. Okay, fine. It's similar concept here. Is like this consumer or this person wants that snow shoveler, right? And they want it, and they're in like in dire need. Like I need this in the matter of hours, right? What is sort of like how are you measuring the impact of that generative AI, making it faster to render and provide those consumers that easy prompt where they can just like spend a couple of seconds, input, post a task, and then they meet the tasker that's going to do the job.
Yeah,
How
so
are you?
we
Yeah,
generally
yeah, I'd love to
We
hear it.
generally find that as a marketplace gains scale and liquidity, everything gets better. And so basically, if you maybe like an analogy that we often use is like a nightclub, where you're trying to meet someone and so you might have, 100 people in your nightclub. The odds that you find a match are less so, and it's probably going to take a little bit of time. If you got thousands of people in your nightclub, then you have a higher chance, probabilistically, that you're going to find the person of your dreams to hook up with. And so, yeah, it's definitely like a scale thing. And the bigger you get, the faster all those things are. So, for example, in Australia now, if you post a job in Sydney for like someone to come and help you with a handyman job,
Hmm.
you're probably going to have the job done in about 20 minutes. Like,
20 minutes.
you're going to post up a job and a person's going to respond to you in, 3 to 5 minutes, and you're going to be able to pick that person, and odds on they're going to be like, yeah, I'm around the corner and I'll just come and do the job. Now, that is in a high liquidity place.
Hmm.
Another example is we're in Austin now. We've just started here about 6 weeks ago. I'm starting to build up the marketplace, and you're probably talking about a few hours to find a handyman in Austin because it takes, there's less liquidity in the marketplace. So that's generally how we see things speed up. It's all about like bringing everyone together. The bigger the community, the better the results. But you do need things like smart connections and matching to facilitate that because, take that example of a nightclub with 10,000
Yeah.
people. That's pretty hard to actually find who's who. And so that's where we really use a lot of like AI and matching to make that better. And we've seen that the matches are just happening. We're accelerating on that path towards getting to the 2-minute handyman type scenario.
I know that is amazing, and I imagine the repeat, right? As you, of course, it requires scale, but that satisfied consumer, who gets the handyman or that person that they were looking for on the first try, the probability of them coming back to AirTasker to post another request or another, someone else to come is rather high, right?
Totally. So when we started out, we basically started out as like, and I probably sound crazy because I'm using so many of these like dating analogies or whatever, but we basically started out as like essentially a dating app business model, which is that it's free to post a job. It's free to quote on jobs if you're a worker. We only take a cut if you successfully get your job done. So that was sort of the business model. But what that sort of led to is that every time you needed someone new to do a different kind of job, snow shoveling, handyman, photographer, mime artist, whatever different job, then you would come back to AirTasker and you would find someone new. But if you found someone that you really liked and you wanted to just do that job with them, then we wouldn't see that come back through AirTasker. And so we've been chipping away at that problem and learning more about how to, bring all of that back into our marketplace to drive up the repeat rate. And what we discovered is the most simple thing is like it doesn't make sense to be charging people like 20% or something for repeat jobs. It actually makes sense to only charge people like 4% or 2% for those repeat jobs because once you've met someone, you don't need the introduction anymore from AirTasker. And so what we realized is like a huge part of it is you've got to get the price to value a relationship really, really right. And a lot of these marketplaces that I think spun up in the on-demand economy, probably 10 years ago, I think probably missed that point. They were kind of like, oh, but aren't we Uber? Can't we just keep charging 20%? And the answer is, like on Uber, you need to go back to the marketplace every time because you need a different driver.
Yes.
Because you're in a different location, different time, different city. Whereas if it's like your cleaner, well, you don't actually need the platform to introduce you to the same person over and over again. Once you found your cleaner, you do need the platform to provide you with insurance and some payment help and all this kind of stuff. But it doesn't make sense to charge people 20%. So that was actually the biggest thing we learned about how do you grow into the repeat piece. And we've been chipping away at it. And we've got a great business now in doing that. But I think that's where the big opportunity is when everyone's just like, of course, I put all my jobs through AirTasker.
Right. Instead of going,
going off platform or
disintermediate, AirTasker. So, which brings me to my next question, because this is, I love talking to founders and entrepreneurs about their journey. Looking back, like, okay, the repeat rate and cracking that nut on getting those people back through AirTasker to book those tasks. Again, if they found the tasker that they like, what are some other like aha moments? Looking back in the 14 years, like, oh my goodness, thank goodness we solved or we thought about X, Y, and Z that you think would be applicable to the other entrepreneurs who are going to be listening to our conversation.
I would say one of the biggest ones that it was an aha moment that probably we had about 5 years after we started. And it was that back in like 2016, we were raising money. And one of the companies that we raised money from was the owner of the biggest television network in Australia, Channel 7. And they invested cash in us, but they also said, hey, you've got to take like a few $1 million of our advertising in exchange for shares too. So, we'll give you like a few million of cash, but you'll also take a few $1 million of ads and, we'll take equity for both of those things. And we needed the cash at the time. So we're like, okay, this is actually like, let's do this deal. And so we're sitting there with like a few millions of dollars of like ad inventory. And we're like, we've never advertised on TV. All we've ever done is like Google Ads and sort of like hacky organic SEO and stuff like that. But what we did is we actually were like, look, we've got it. We were like, I know what's going to fail. What's going to fail is if we spend like $5,000 a week on ads on TV and we've got like one ad, we're like, let's just go hard. And so we actually filmed a commercial. It's actually, I really liked the commercial. It's called Like a Boss. It had like old people dancing and shit. It was pretty cool. And we launched it. And at the time we were like, oh my God, like we just spent $1 million and, our revenue went up a little bit, but certainly not by $1 million. But over about 5 years, what we realized is that like every year we just had this like lift that was propelling the company forward. Like, revenue was just organically moving up and up and up. And during that time, like our brand awareness went from like 6% to about 60% in Australia. Like everything was just heading in the right direction. And what we realized from that is that like we really had inadvertently really focused on building our brand as opposed to being really good at, say, SEO or really good at like pay-per-click Google marketing or really good at like Facebook or Instagram marketing. And I think that's really important because ultimately you want to build like a direct relationship with your customers and for them to go, hey, I need a job done. I'm going to go to AirTasker. Like I've got the app in my pocket, I'm going to do it. And I think what we're seeing now is that, as the tide changes from Google, to probably like AI search, things are going to Perplexity and OpenAI and, Google sort of, now feeling like a bit of like an old school, research tool. It's so important that we built our own brand rather than become masters of Google, because if that was how your business was built on, I get all my leads from Google. Well, now it's moving all to OpenAI, then you'd be out in the cold a little bit. So I guess my big takeaway moment from that was focus on building your own brand and your own relationship with customers.
It's the big source of contention on LinkedIn. Or go to networking dinners. Is it brand? Is it performance marketing? Is it one or the other? Is it both? And you hit the nail on the head, right? It's all about the equity that you build. Because to your point, if someone's looking for a task, you want that task synonymous with AirTasker. It's not like, oh, where do I go? Like, oh, I already know where I go because I know AirTasker. I know the community and the platform that it has, for me to post those tasks. And
I think we call it like brand salience. Like you just got to be there. Like you got to like pop into people's heads when they, like in the same way like Uber. I need to go somewhere, bang, Uber, instantly in your head. Or I need to order some food, DoorDash, or whatever, straight into your head. And I think, if you kind of think about all of these, a lot of the platforms like, Meta, Facebook, Insta, all of these like advertising platforms is, even if you get really good at them, you're kind of reliant on them and you have to kind of like pay the toll every time a customer comes to you through those platforms. And I think that was okay when everything was in growth mode because Google could be like really generous. Like they had like, gajillions more searches happening every day. And so they were pretty like generous with like, you can have a bit of traffic, you can have a bit of traffic. But now that sort of party is sort of stopped, now it's kind of like, okay, now we need to make money. And if you're a business like bidding on Google Ads, you're like, oh my God, these prices are just going through the roof. Yes. And I think it's actually really sad because a lot of businesses are just not going to be able to survive in that, with sort of ad prices where they are.
There you have it. I think this is a great place to put a pin on this conversation, Tim. It's been great to learn about you, learn about AirTasker. For folks who are going to be listening to this conversation, is it just airtasker.com where they can go and sign up?
Yep, airtasker.com, or we have an app in the App Store and the Google Play Store as well.
Okay, excellent. And for folks who have questions for you directly, how can they reach you?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. So I'm Tim J. Fung on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, and also to follow AirTasker on social media. I know the company's active on Instagram. Anywhere else?
We are on Insta. We're on TikTok. We're on Facebook. Yeah, find us. And we are pretty active on LinkedIn as well, being part of the future of work. So, we're on all of those. all those platforms. But I'll tell you what, the best thing ever is go to airtask.com and hit the browse tasks feed. Because people tell us that is kind of like the coolest social network now, like just scrolling and seeing what people need to go and